Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have Dr. Avani Desai. We're just going to go and talk about some very candid conversations about career transitions with a break, and then how she comes back to the workforce as well. She's a mother, so I'm going to share her insights on how to be a mom and be a pharmacist and manage it all. So I want to give a warm welcome to Avani.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Ann.
Absolutely. Can you just kind of introduce yourself? I did a brief introduction, but I just want you to go ahead and do your own introduction as well, and just so folks get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. So I am currently in the teaching and research field of pharmacy, which has always been a dream of mine, and so I'm really, really excited to be here. But prior to starting, after pharmacy school, I completed a PGY1, PGY2, MS in Pharmacy Administration residency program at the Houston program with the Michael E. DeBakey VA, which I'm super, super proud of. It was one of the best 2-year experiences and training experiences that I've ever had. And that's where I was so fortunate to meet Ann. And so after that residency program, I was a supervisor manager role in an inpatient pharmacy setting for about a couple of years. Then I did take a 2-year break to be with my daughter. One of the most amazing experiences of my life. I was able to take that time apart and really just spend time being full-time mom. And then when she turned about 2 is when I started in this position. So I've been here ever since.
So since you took a non-traditional route where you took a break and then come back, what was kind of like thought process for you while you're going through that process of knowing that you have a little girl and taking the break and then potentially coming back?
You know, it's a really tough position to be in when you're a woman. Obviously, you've got lots of priorities, and sometimes career is number one, and then life happens, and all of a sudden you realize, something might be more important to you than necessarily being at work. And that's really what happened to me. After I gave birth, I realized that I felt that my daughter needed me more than anyone else in the world did, and I wanted to be able to be there for her in those critical times in her early periods of life. Now, there's going to be so many mentors that tell you so many different things, and that was kind of the same position I was in. I had a lot of folks that told me that, potentially taking a break later in your career might be beneficial, or that it would be hard to get back in the working field. And I did take all of that advice in, but what I realized for myself was I needed to be truthful to what mattered most to me. And I needed to be okay with the fact that I may not end up getting the same type of job when I try to enter back into the workforce, because just as much as we'd like to imagine that we're just as great of pharmacists when we graduate that we are, if we take a break from the field, that's kind of what I was up against. So for me, I realized that I wanted to value that mother role far beyond whatever role I would potentially aspire to be in, or whatever my future career job was, because I was okay with the fact that it could potentially take me a little bit longer to get there. And so that really kind of made me realize that I needed to put, my daughter first. And I don't think that that's necessarily the route that everyone should take, or I don't think that it's necessarily something that everyone, deals with. But for me personally, it was just something that was weighing a little too heavy on my heart. And so I'm glad I did what I did. And some things that I feel were really, really important were, during that gap, really acknowledging where my weaknesses were as a pharmacist. So when I was in residency, I always had this dream that I wanted to also get my board certification. And within that 2-year span frame, it just did not happen. I had purchased the materials and all that, but I never got to it. And so that was one of the areas I identified as, I love my job. However, I didn't feel like I'd had enough, clinical experience being a manager. And so that's kind of one thing I did during my gap. I decided I definitely wanted to pursue my certification in my board certification. And so I was successfully able to complete that. So I think that if you do take a break, I think it's really important to acknowledge potentially, what areas that you find yourself to be particularly weak in, or areas that you just want to grow in, and really take those opportunities while you have the time, or while you have the minimal time that you may, being a full-time mom, and see what you can do to kind of achieve some of those alternate dreams that you have that would still help you get, the position that you want when you enter back in.
And I also know that while you're off for those 2 years, you also continue to stay involved professionally. Like, how do you think, I guess, first of all, what are some factors to help you stay involved, and how does that help you kind of get back to the workforce?
Absolutely. So obviously when you are a full-time anything, there's always that component of extracurricular involvement. Whether you are a pharmacist in your practice setting or whether you're a full-time mom, you never stop being a pharmacist, really. And so that's how I attribute professional organizations. That involvement is just something that you're going to have lifelong. And so for me, even when I was a full-time mom, I stayed involved, and I was really a part of the Houston program board of advisors, and in the role of an alumni representative. And so as part of that, I recognized a need for a class that would allow for transitions. And so we were able to put on or coordinate a class for the alumni, for the residents taught by alumni. And so that was, again, another contribution I was able to make. Even being a full-time mom, I was still able to kind of still be active in pharmacy and identify an area that wouldn't take quite as much time as maybe I had at that time, and still be potentially something that would, keep me engaged. So I definitely think those types of opportunities, identifying maybe things that you weren't able to do when you were in your career, however, you may still have little bits of time to contribute towards. I think it's really important to do those things and really stay involved.
Yeah, I really admire your spirits for trying to finish or complete your board certification, because that takes a lot of stamina and determination. And then I know Avani got involved with the Houston program as the alumni and coordinating that class. It helps you build relationships, right? And it
Absolutely.
keeps you fresh, and it keeps you at the forefront of folks that may have jobs opening, and later on kind of keeping that building that relationship and keeping you at the front line, even though you are still on your break, supposedly. And a full-time mom is a full-time job. So,
yes,
right?
It is. It really is.
So in terms of that, like, what are your tips for folks out there who are probably transitioning on being a new mom or on the verge of having a family and also trying to manage being a pharmacist? Now you're also working a full-time job, just tips-wise.
That's a good point. I think it's really important to understand the landscape of the career that you choose to be in. If you're in a career where potentially there are openings or there's a big gap in leadership, which, being a part of the Houston program, we were able to recognize that leadership, there's a huge gap. I think because of that type of field that I was in, I was able to feel a little bit more comforted knowing that my skills wouldn't necessarily drop off or not be of value even if I did take a break. Now, if I had taken a longer break, or if I was a part of a subspecialty that evolved or clearly evolved, then I would really need to recognize that and identify opportunities for how I'm going to stay still abreast with that knowledge. So I think it's really important to really focus on what your career in pharmacy really stands for, or what the environment looks like, because that will set you up and gear you up to be successful no matter what route you take in terms of your family life. So one thing I might say is, for example, for a pharmacist that may be practicing in the retail setting, if you're in a market that's flooded with pharmacists, it may be really hard to go back to a job like that. And so potentially you may want to consider what other opportunities are available out there, and how can you kind of set yourself up for being successful to enter back into the workforce. Maybe there is MTM therapy or certification program that you really want to get involved in, or maybe you want to take a step up and potentially look at the nursing home side of things and seeing if that's maybe a calling for you. I think it's just very important to recognize kind of what opportunities may be a threat for your career when you go back. And so really building yourself up and trying to make sure that everything that you do is going to gear you up for that next opportunity is really important.
Mm-hmm. And having the mentors, that maintaining that contact with the mentors that you have and being able to keep in touch with them and just sharing your progress. I mean, again, with that 2-year where you're a full-time mom trying to get that BCPS, that clinical practice, I think that's important just so you can get in that realm and being involved with the Houston program, or, you know, for those that want to be involved, there are so many opportunities to be involved in various organizations, local, state to national. And it depends on, you know, what the different type of organization you are. For me, I'm involved with Gulf Coast and then TSHP and then ASHP. But I think the biggest things is just be involved and be engaged, because that's how you build relationship and working on projects that you never know that might lead you to a potential job opportunity.
Absolutely. I can't stress the importance of mentorship. The networks that I formed throughout just my career and even beyond when I was a full-time mom and I was struggling to figure out, you know, how to balance the two, how to balance life and career. It was those mentors that I had that were moms themselves and that maybe didn't take a break, but they were able to provide for me the types of things that they would do in order to balance their life. Those were the types of people that got me through that particular period. So I cannot stress enough how much or how important it is to find mentors in the career of pharmacy. They really are the ones that kind of get you through those hurdles because they've been through that similar transition period in their life.
So with that, that's a great transition. Like, how do you find your mentors, and what are some tips you would give to those that are listening right now on how to find mentors in general?
So I think one of the biggest aspects of mentorship is really being able to identify those that you resonate with. So for me, I identified that quickly when I was a part of professional organizations, and I was able to listen to talks of those pharmacists that inspired me forward. They made me think about not just what I was doing maybe in the classroom, but how the profession was impacted. And that resonated with me. And so I think those are the types of things that I think about or consider. There are definite mentorship opportunities through professional organizations. They have mentorship matchups where you get to kind of fill out a survey about yourself, and then the mentors fill out surveys about themselves, and then again they match up based on characteristics that you find similar. So there's definite opportunities like that, professional organizations, mentorship programs of nature. Also, when you're in pharmacy school, there are lots of professors that serve as excellent mentors. And I've been very blessed to have a lot of those mentors as well. So I think just really keeping your eyes and ears open, identifying opportunities that you feel like you would blossom in, and potentially seeking out those pharmacists that are in those areas. That's really, really important for your growth and for your development as you progress in your career.
Mm-hmm. And I would share similar viewpoints on finding mentors. So I would say definitely professional organizations, or if you do our residency programs right now, your resident director, your coordinators,
yes, good point.
your preceptors,
yes.
All those are possibilities of, you know, if you connect with someone, you felt like you are a mesh, then those are good opportunities to meet with them, even ask them to go out for lunch or coffee break. Regardless how busy they have time for you, because I feel like many people have had great mentors and preceptors, so I think pay it forward. Most folks will be more than willing to help and in that sense and take them under your wings, or take you under their wings.
The one thing I will add to that is acknowledge when maybe that mentor is not for you. And what I mean by that is a lot of great pharmacists out there, they're going to have so many people that they're mentoring, and sometimes it's not going to work out to be the best relationship for you. An example of that, when I was a part of a professional organization where I sought out a mentor, the mentor was not in my town. And so it was really difficult because this mentor had plenty of other students that she was mentoring. And so for me, it didn't quite work out to where we were able to connect, but that's okay. You know, it's okay that necessarily the one that you had sought out didn't work out, because there's so many other pharmacists out there that can really help you. And And it's really important to seek out multiple mentors, because a lot of times one pharmacist will be able to provide you one perspective, but when you look at multiple perspectives, that's really what's going to shape you and create a really solid candidate for whatever opportunity that you're seeking out.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to add to that is that sometimes your mentors, like Avani said, they're busy, right? They have a lot of other folks in addition to their full-time job and whatever else that's taken up, their life. So being able to be proactive and keep in touch. You don't have to keep in touch weekly, but maybe once every month or once every quarter, say, kind of send them an email, hey, this is my update. Give them like a quick few lines on the email. And then maybe even like phone calls. It just really depends on their communication preference. If there's someone that prefer text, you can text them, hey, how are things going? Hope things are going well. Just want to let you know that I'm working on this project. So just so they, keep them or keep you at their front flying, and knowing that you're trying to keep in touch and close the loop. And I can't emphasize the importance of closing the loop, like especially if they're helping you a job or they're helping you with a project or something that you ask for their help. Close the loop with them. Say, hey, thank you for your help with XYZ, because it goes a long way, and it shows that you care, and you also showing that you're trying to keep in touch with them. It's kind of interesting because there are folks that you ask for help and then you got a job and they never hear from you again, but then when you come back and ask for another job, then it just feels it's not organic, right? So just make sure you don't burn bridges, or even if you don't burn bridges, but just keep that bridge going and flowing, even if it means like once every now and then check in just to see how they're doing and how you're doing. Sometimes I know some students or trainees say, well, I don't want to bother them. Like, actually, when I get messages from students or previous mentees, I just like, oh, wow, they're doing good. So it's always kind of nice to hear and have that follow-up and close the loop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back on tips on being a mom and being a pharmacist. So how do you integrate those responsibilities, and what are some things you wish you have known, or things you're doing and you're like, man, I wish I've done it earlier?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it's really difficult. It's difficult to find the time to be 100% career and 100% mom. And I think that's initially why I decided that I was going to be 100% mom, because I realized a personality trait about myself is I like to put 100% into whatever I commit myself to. And so what I had to realize when I became a mom was that there wasn't an ability to be 100% in either direction, and I had to be comfortable with the fact that it wasn't going to be necessarily what expectation I had set for myself. It wasn't always going to match up to that. And so when I started getting more comfortable with the idea of that, I recognized, okay, I need to find my quality time that I know that I need to spend with my daughter, and adjust my time and make sure I manage my time accordingly so that I'm able to fulfill my responsibilities, but also, able to fulfill that side of me that needs to be there for my daughter. So I think that was really kind of the challenge that I addressed. So some things I would do is acknowledge in a working week how much time I needed to allot for her. So for example, like this past week, there was a birthday party for her on a weekend. And even though I had a really, really busy weekend where I needed to catch up on a few things from work, I told myself no matter what, that party was going to happen. I was going to spend that time and take her to that party. And so I made sure I worked around that, and I made sure that all of my time commitments flowed well enough so that I was able to take her to that. Similarly, what I've acknowledged for myself is certain tasks that can be done on the weekends I'm okay with doing, because I want to make sure that I have my evenings at least sometime every day for my daughter. And so that was exactly a compromise that I had to do, whereas I felt like previously to that, even if I was working into the evening hours, I was going to complete the task because I wanted to get it done, and it had to be checked off my to-do list because that was a sign for myself for that day. It's not always going to happen. You're not always going to be able to fulfill exactly what you want to fulfill that day, and you have to be okay with it, and you have to acknowledge the fact that sometimes family comes first in that instance. And so really understanding those fine lines and being able to balance that was kind of the art I had to learn. And I feel like I'm still learning today.
I feel like most of us, I don't have a kid, but I mean, I'm married, so being newlyweds, I think before I was 110% career, and now being, newlywed and being married, learn to space that time and making sure you have dedicated time for your spouse or your partner, and making that personal quality life and not always work. And like you said, it's a work in progress. So what are some either community support that you reach out, or technologies or services that you have to delegate to kind of help your day-to-day operations kind of flow a little bit smoother?
So I think in terms of folks that I've reached out to, really other moms were big help for me. Really made me acknowledge and realize what I could do and what I couldn't do, and not make me feel so bad about the facts that I couldn't do certain things. I think a lot of other moms have stepped in those same shoes, and they understand that they've dealt with kind of similar complications or similar ideas where they're trying to be the best, or they're trying to be super mom, and then it's not happening. And so really being able to talk to those types of people that are a part of the same experiences as you have been just so vital for me. So I can't harp on that enough. It's really important. I couldn't remember the second part of your question.
It was any technology or services that you have to kind of delegate?
Oh, very good point. So, certain tasks at home, even taking care of cleaning your house, you may be one of those people that are so fond of cleaning, or you want to do it yourself. Understanding that some of those tasks, it's okay to kind of delegate off and maybe have a maid or hire someone to do those tasks, because essentially when you make a to-do list of everything you really need to do to be successful as a person, not just with work, but with your life and with your family, sometimes you realize that 24 hours is just not enough to do those things. And so really acknowledging which of those tasks you are going to do and which ones you can delegate is really important. For me personally, I've recognized the value of family. I could not have done half the things that I've done thus far without the support of grandparents and people that were willing to take on my daughter and see that she was growing and still being nurtured. Those were really important factors for me that I've realized and I've learned to let go of, because essentially when I first became a mom, I thought that, no, it's me, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to be there for my daughter. Whereas what I realized was the beauty of having family involved is they cared just as much about her, and they could do some of those tasks for me, and it was fine. So really learning to let go of that and being okay with being dependent on someone else for help. That took me a long way.
And then were there any feelings of guilt that there's certain times that you can't fulfill a certain thing, and how do you overcome that guilt of being a mother and trying to be a perfectionist?
Yes, that I still go through guilt sometimes, so I don't know if I'm the best to answer that. But no, there are always going to be aspects where you still feel like you want to give more to something and you're not going to be able to. But I think when you find something that you love to do and you're in a position where you have such a beautiful family life where you're so happy to be a part of that, but then you're also so happy to be a part of your career, I think understanding that there are going to be times where one thing comes first and the other takes a second priority. And that's going to be very lucid. In one phase, you're going to have one thing come as a priority. Maybe, this past weekend, my daughter was a priority where she got to go to that birthday. But there may be another weekend where, I'm not able to do that and I have to commit to a work opportunity. And so really just knowing that it's going to be a game that kind of flows here and there, and it's not going to be one over the other. I think acknowledging that, also a lot of self-reflection, really ensuring that are you indeed giving enough time to both areas, acknowledging when you're not. You may not be being perfect, but what are those things that you can do better? I think I'm kind of in a state of constant self-reflection, constant constant seeking of continuous quality improvement within myself even. So as a person, but also as whatever my commitments are in my life. So I think really doing a lot of that kind of helps you gear yourself better and make sure that whatever life that you're creating for yourself is going to be fulfilling both career-wise and family-wise.
And I think you hit on a target talking about partnership and communicating. Communication is such a key point. Talking with your spouse, your partner, your significant other, saying, hey, these are things that I have to do this week, and these are things that, what are some things that can be sacrificed, right? Versus what are some things that you can as a priorities. And sometimes work may be up top and you may have to stay later at one night versus other day you may have to leave early so you can go home and have a date night. So kind of having that realization and like Avani said, is a communication, is a constant back and forth. But I think if your partner's in the game and as well as in the communication plan, that helps tremendously.
Absolutely.
And basically bring him into kind of like what's going on at work, what are some things that you have to do, and what are some things that he or she or that you can sacrifice, because it's not, and letting go of being perfectionist. And I think most of us, if not all of us pharmacists, tend to be on the perfectionist side and having that like I need to do everything 110%. Recent years I've realized that I have to kind of pull back a little bit. Maybe 80% is good, and that's what I have to accept it is. So being able to kind of recognize yourself and self-reflect and making sure that you know your goals and what those are, and you also have a personal goal and also have someone at home and or have a kid that needing your time. With that, I want to close. Last questions. What advice or anything that you want to share with maybe new moms or that are out there, as well as other trainees and residents, from your perspective?
Sure. So I think above all else, be yourself. I think understand yourself, be self-aware, know what makes you happy, and essentially I think that'll kind of be your guiding kind of force to making sure that you're living your life happily. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're all pharmacists, we all share a similar profession, but I think we all have other sides to us, and those need to be fulfilled too for you to be happy. So that's kind of my last thoughts.
Yes, and I think one thing I want to add to that is, finding what you're interested in, and one thing that you drive towards, or your goal, or whatever your hobby is. Like for us, or at least for me, I was inspired these past few months to start this YouTube channel and share it with other people, and then get insights from speakers like Avani. So that's kind of like my side hustle that I admire, and like, just as a passion. So finding what you want to do and what you drive to do, it just makes your day, as well as being a pharmacist, more fulfilling. It can be non-pharmacy things that you want to choose to down that passion, but just make sure you always constantly be engaged in things that drives you and makes you want to get up every day and do it. So I want to thank you for listening. This is our Candid Conversation with Dr. Avani Desai. And if you have any comments or questions, please post below. If there's any other topics you would like to hear, please post it as well, and I will make sure I'll try to get a hold of the speaker that you're interested in. Thank you.
Thank you.